focus is clearly unintention.
Hi, my name is Ryan, aka Odyssey113. Today I'm going to teach you how I put together my scratch tracks using Ableton Live and my own vocals. You can use whatever you want to do this. You can use different material, somebody else's vocals, whatever, just making your own scratch track. Of course, copyright, applause, apply in production, blah, 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 you get it. Anyway, before the days of Serato, I used to say to myself as an aspiring DJ/MC, I wish I could scratch my raps. That would be freaking sweet. But who has access to a vinyl cutter? Nobody I know. Now that we do live in the era of Serato and Rekordbox, as well as Ableton, all the other DAWs, it's a very, very attainable thing. So here are a few examples that I've used of my own personal scratch records.
Punk's not. They just got lost in the mix.
So anyways, you get the idea. Let's get to it. First thing that I would like to kind of go through is the way that I would recommend exporting my verses if you are working with original audio or original vocals. Go ahead and solo your vocal group so you know you're only dealing with the vocals.
Back and wishing, shit, I'm mashing on a mission, fishing for wisdom in a pond you can't find no fishing.
So anyway, we have some very doctored up vocals. We have a lot of processing on them. Most of it's been baked into the track, but there is a little bit that's still on my sends. So just for example, I do have some vocal reverb going on as well as a delay on here. For the sake of exporting these, I would recommend turning off at least the delay. You're going to want something closer to a dry vocal. I don't always necessarily recommend completely dry. I sometimes like a little bit of reverb on there myself. In fact, this export, I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and export with the reverb. Now for exporting, I would recommend going with 24-bit, no dither, wave. Sample rate, if you're working in 44.1, just make sure you keep it 44.1, or if you're 48, keep it at 48. And for the rendered track, just make sure you're selecting just the vocal group. And go ahead and export. Make sure you put it somewhere it's going to be easy to find. Okay, so now that we have our track in place, we are going to just do a few things here. First off, I'm just going to kind of bring the volume levels up since they were all pretty well balanced before. Just want to get it a little closer to 0 dB or something close to it. Okay, so now we have a scratch track that we're going to chop up essentially. So first thing that I'd like to kind of explain is just the chopping block method, if you will. This is something that I learned from the Ill Gates community and Ill Gates himself. Okay, so basically the idea is you name the track chop block, create another track below it, and you just start finding little blips of audio that you like, that you want to scratch.
Yo, I write rhymes for the lyricists and those that want to kick it. With the vision, they're gonna make it on the mission cause they got dope flows. Nah,
So I think
got dope flows.
something like that.
Cause they got dope flows. Not cause some got dope flows.
Let's just take it from there, let's say. So the idea here is that you're just basically taking tidbits of audio, making quick little slices. So I'm going to select that. Now, I would recommend getting into using shortcuts if you aren't already. And Control E on Windows will chop this, basically cut it. Make sure I'm referring to that right here. That's not one that's listed in here. That's right. So anyway, that's going to chop it, cut it, look at it, however you want. I know there's a real name for that, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. So anyway, you're just going to grab it, pull it down, and boom, you chopped a piece of the block. So now that you have this little piece right here, I would recommend you can go ahead and kind of pull the tails back a little bit if you want. There, my settings right now are giving it clip fades already. And we are going to go ahead and do this a couple more times, grab some little clips of audio that we like. And I'm not going to make you watch me do that. Okay, so now that I have taken out some cuts of the track that I think would be cool to scratch, I'm going to go ahead and move them a little bit closer together here so I can see what I'm working with. Now, I don't really need the original track anymore. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. The idea here is you have these little blips of audio that we are going to put in order, kind of like you would receive if you had purchased a scratch track, like Super Seal or something like that. Okay, so open my screen up a little bit more. Okay, so the idea here is you're just basically going to lay these out, give them a little bit of space in between. So this first one, it'd help if I would turn it on.
Got dope flows.
So we can take this, see how it sounds.
Got dope flows.
Say probably something like that.
Got dope flows. Got dope flows.
And we could go a little closer.
Got dope flows. Got dope flows.
So you get the idea. I'm just basically finding an amount of milliseconds that works to basically repeat it. And you can do this, 5-6 times or whatever. Again, so it's just basically, if you can imagine this on a turntable.
Got dope flows. Got dope flows. Got dope flows.
Gives you a few times to repeat it if you want to. I think I'm only going to do these about 4 times a piece. Then I would take my other piece of audio, move it down here, and find a home for it. So I think about right there would be a good place to start. We'll give it about whatever that is. I'm not sure what that is in milliseconds, but looks good. So we'll do 4 of those.
That just be flowing the words while you be blowing the herbs. That just be flowing the words while you be blowing the herbs.
So you get the idea. I'm just going to keep doing this with all of my samples until I have a finished track. Next, we are going to look at our mastering chain, and we're just going to add a few things, a little bit of mild EQ, add a little bit of a high shelf, do a little bit of compression, not a lot, and we're going to use a little bit of limiting at the end. So for the sake of, since I'm doing the Ableton tutorial, I'm going to use Ableton plugins for this. Typically, I might reach for FabFilter, but in this case, we're going to use all Ableton plugins. So I'm going to go ahead, use a glue compressor. Let's go ahead and actually use an EQ8 on this. Okay, so to start out on the mastering chain, don't really need to roll off too much low end. We'll roll off a little bit here, maybe let's say around the 25 Hertz mark. Bump that up by accident. There we go. Okay, and then we're just going to give it a little bump in this high end. We'll give it a little high bump right here. Let's say maybe up in the maybe like 1K kind of going up range. Give it about 3, roughly 3 on the dB gain there.
I start flowing with these verses.
So anyway, we'll mute that other track. Sound a little better.
I start flowing with these verses. Shit gets twisted like fallopian.
Okay, so now we got a little more push in that high end. And for the sake of your eardrums, I'm just going to turn this master down 10 dB before I do the mastering here.
I start flowing with these verses. Shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes.
And I'm also going to add a visualizer to the end of my limiter just so I can kind of see what the signal path is doing to the sound.
I start flowing with these verses. Shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull the threshold down on this compressor just a little bit here.
I start flowing with these verses. Shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes.
Just until I do start seeing it give it a little bit of gain reduction.
I start flowing with these verses. Shit.
I'm going to push that makeup gain up a bit.
I start flowing with these verses. Shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes. I start flowing with these verses. Shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes. I start flowing with these verses.
Go ahead and soft clip a little bit on that. Go ahead and turn that on with that. Makeup gain, I'm going to let sit about 4 dB on that. Not really going to adjust my attack releaser ratio on this one. I'm going to push this limiter up a little bit, see what we can get.
I start flowing with these verses, shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes. I start flowing with these verses, shit gets twisted like fallopian tubes.
Okay. So that looks pretty good. Normally I'd be a little bit more specific about going through all these samples, but for the sake of this tutorial and the scratch record, I think this should do fine. So I'm going to go ahead and render this. Let's do it in same exact settings we used before. We're just going to go ahead and do 24-bit. You can add dither if you want. It's probably not going to make a big difference. This is just a scratch record. So before I throw this on my decks and scratch a little, let's throw this inside of Ableton and just see how it looks. Awesome. So to me, it looks pretty damn good. So let's scratch some shit.
Focus clearly on intention. Get lost in the group. That just be flow. I focus clearly on intent. Got dope flow. Dope flow.